Dad perfect events. I never thought I'd end up here, staring at my phone in a hospital bed 3 days after open heart surgery, realizing my son had blocked my number. The discharge nurse had just told me I'd be going home in 2 hours, and I had nobody to pick me up. My apartment was 40 miles away, and I couldn't even afford cab fare. I was 60 years old, and for the first time in my life, I understood what it meant to be completely abandoned. My name is Eugene Crawford. For 32 years, I was a floor supervisor at Ford's Dearborn plant. Started on the line in 1985, worked my way up to managing the paint shop operations. Rain or shine, I was there at 6 a.m., making sure those F-100s rolled out perfect. The chemical fumes finally got to me, though. Years of breathing that stuff, even with masks, and my ticker started giving out. Plant doctor said it was occupational exposure, but workers' comp barely covered the basics. I retired early at 57 when Ford offered buyouts. Wasn't much choice really, my pension covered, rent and groceries, nothing fancy. But I was proud of what I'd built. Raised my boy Bradley alone after his mother Linda died in a car accident when he was 8. Worked double shifts, skipped meals, drove the same beat-up Chevy for 15 years, all so Bradley could have opportunities I never had. And it worked. Bradley got into University of Michigan, then law school. Landed a job at one of those downtown Detroit corporate firms, the kind with marble lobbies and coffee that costs more than I used to make in a day. He married Jennifer, a marketing consultant who specialized in lifestyle brands, which, far as I could tell, meant selling overpriced stuff to people with too much money. They lived in Birmingham, one of those suburbs with more bathrooms than my whole apartment had rooms. I was happy for him, proud even. Sure, the visits got shorter. Phone calls became texts. Christmas became a $50 gift card to some restaurant I couldn't afford even with the money on it. But he was busy, successful. That's what I told myself. Then came the chest pains. Started during the plant closure ceremonies last spring. Stress, I figured. Watching 30 years of American manufacturing disappear will do that to you. But one Tuesday morning, I collapsed in the Meijer parking lot. My neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, found me and called 911. Doctors at Henry Ford Hospital said it was serious. Triple bypass surgery. The chemical exposure had damaged more than just my lungs. They needed to operate within a week or I might not see 65. Surgery alone was $85,000. Medicare would cover most of it, but not everything. And I'd need help recovering, someone to drive me to appointments, help with medications. I called Bradley, took him 8 hours to call back. When he did, there was noise in the background, voices, clinking glasses. He was at some kind of business dinner. "Dad, this is really bad timing," he said. I could barely hear him over the conversation and music. "Jennifer and I are at a client event. Can I call you tomorrow?" "Bradley, I'm in the hospital. They're saying I need heart surgery." The background noise went muffled. He must have stepped outside. "What? When?" "Friday. They want to do it Friday." "I'm scared, son." There was a pause, long enough that I thought the call had dropped. "Friday. Dad, I have depositions all week. This case has been in preparation for months. I can't just... Bradley, I might die." Another pause. "You're not going to die, Dad. You're tough as nails. You survived 32 years at Ford, didn't you? Look, I'll try to visit over the weekend after the surgery, okay?" He didn't visit that weekend, or the next. He sent a text the morning of my surgery. "Good luck, Dad. You've got this." That was it. No call, no visit, nothing. The surgery was terrifying. They cracked open my chest, rerouted everything, and when I woke up, I felt like I'd been hit by a freight train. But worse than the physical pain was the emptiness. I was in a recovery room with 3 other guys. All of them had families crowded around their beds, wives holding hands, kids bringing flowers, grandchildren showing off school projects. My bed had nobody, just machines beeping and a window that looked out at the parking structure. On the 3rd day, Ruth Baker came in. She was one of those no-nonsense nurses who'd seen everything. She'd been checking on me regularly, and I think she'd noticed I never had visitors. "Mr. Crawford," she said, reading my chart. "You're being discharged this afternoon. We need to know who's picking you up and what your home care situation looks like." "I'll figure it out," I said. She looked at me over her reading glasses. "You just had major heart surgery. You can't drive. You can't lift anything over 5 pounds. You need someone checking on you for at least a week. I'll manage. Mr. Crawford, this isn't optional. Hospital policy. We can't discharge you without a care plan. Then I'll call a cab. My apartment's on the 1st floor." Ruth sighed. "Do you have anyone?" Family? Friends? I thought about lying, but what was the point? My son? But he's busy. She didn't say anything. She'd heard that before, I'm sure. Give me an hour. Let me see what I can do. I lay there feeling humiliated. 60 years old, and I couldn't even arrange a ride home from the hospital. Spent my whole life being independent, never asking for help. Now, I was completely helpless. I thought about calling Bradley again, but my pride wouldn't let me. If my own son couldn't be bothered to check on me after major surgery, I wasn't going to beg. That's when Dr. Kenneth Morrison walked in. I'd met him briefly before surgery. He was the cardiac surgeon who'd done the operation, late 60s, silver hair. The kind of presence that made you feel calmer just by being in the room. Usually had residents trailing behind him, but today he was alone. "Mr. Crawford," he said, pulling up a chair next to my bed. "How are you feeling?" "Like someone cracked open my chest," I said. He smiled slightly. "That's accurate. I did crack open your chest and put it back together quite nicely, if I do say so myself." He picked up my chart, scanned it, then set it down. "Ruth tells me you're having trouble arranging transportation home. I'll figure something out. She also tells me you live alone, 40 miles from here, no family support." Dr. Morrison was quiet for a moment. He had this way of looking at you like he could see right through whatever you were trying to hide. "Mr. Crawford, I'm going to be direct with you. You cannot go home alone, not yet. You need someone checking on you, helping with medications, watching for complications. Without that, you have a significant risk of readmission, or worse. What do you suggest? I can't afford a nursing facility. My pension barely covers rent." He leaned back in his chair. "I have a suggestion. It's unconventional, but hear me out." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I have a large house, more space than I know what to do with since my wife Sharon passed. I also have a full-time nurse on staff for my own health needs. What if you stayed with me for the next 2 weeks, just until you're stable enough to manage on your own?" I stared at him. "I'm sorry, what?" "You'd have your own room, proper care, meals, everything you need to recover safely." "Dr. Morrison, I can't. That's not. Why would you even offer that?" He stood up and walked to the window, hands in his pockets. "Let me ask you something. Do you remember working as a temp at the River Rouge plant about 35 years ago? Summer of 1989? I was confused by the change in subject. "Yeah, I worked a summer there during a layoff." "Why?" "There was a young guy there, college student, working nights to pay tuition. Broke as dirt." "Sure, I remember. Lots of college kids worked summers." He turned to face me. "January 1990. Coldest winter in 20 years. That student was back at University of Michigan, pre-med, living in a dump apartment, working at a gas station, to pay for books. One day, he found an envelope in his mailbox, no return address. Inside was $500 in cash and a note that said, 'Keep going. Someone believes in you.' My chest tightened, and it had nothing to do with the surgery. That was 35 years ago. How do you... I was that student, Mr. Crawford. That $500 paid for my organic chemistry textbooks and kept me from dropping out. More importantly, it came at a moment when I was ready to quit. I was exhausted, broke, and starting to think I'd made a terrible mistake trying to become a doctor. That money, that note, it kept me going. I didn't know what to say. I'd done that a few times over the years. When I saw someone really struggling, I'd scrape together what I could and leave it for them. Never wanted credit, never told anyone. I'd forgotten about most of them. I never forgot that kindness, Dr. Morrison continued. I didn't know who sent it until 2 weeks ago when I was reviewing your file before surgery. I saw your name and remembered. Eugene Crawford, Ford Motor, summer temp at Rouge. I went through my old journals. Yes, I keep journals, and confirmed it. Same name, same plant. You didn't have to remember that, but I did. It wasn't a debt. I didn't do it for payback, I know. But I'm offering anyway. 2 weeks, let me help you recover. Consider it one act of kindness repaying another. I wanted to say no. Pride is a funny thing. Even when you're desperate, it makes you want to refuse help. But I was tired, so tired. And the thought of struggling alone in my apartment, trying to manage medications I could barely afford, climbing stairs I could barely handle, it terrified me. "Okay," I said quietly. "Thank you." Dr. Morrison smiled. "Good. I'll make the arrangements. We'll get you moved this afternoon." That afternoon, Gary Foster, Dr. Morrison's driver, picked me up in a Mercedes that was probably worth more than I'd made in 5 years. The drive took about 25 minutes through neighborhoods I'd only seen on TV, tree-lined streets, houses set back from the road, gates and circular driveways. Dr. Morrison's house wasn't just big, it was a mansion, 3 stories, stone and brick, gardens that looked like they required a full-time staff. Gary helped me inside where Helen Miller, the nurse, was waiting. Professional, but warm, she showed me to a guest room on the first floor that was larger than my entire apartment. Dr. Morrison thought you'd be more comfortable down here, Helen explained. No stairs, bathroom right through that door. I'm just down the hall if you need anything. The room had a fireplace and a guest room. There was a reading chair by the window, a flat-screen TV, and a bed that looked like something from a fancy hotel. Dr. Morrison appeared in the doorway. Everything all right? This is too much, I said. I can't. It's a room I'm not using. Consider it yours for the next 2 weeks. Now rest. Dinner's at 6. Helen will come get you. Or if you're too tired, she'll bring it here. That first night, I couldn't sleep. Partly because of the pain, partly because I was in a stranger's house, but mostly because I kept thinking about Bradley, the boy I'd raised alone, who couldn't even be bothered to visit me in the hospital, who had blocked my number when I tried to call him. Around midnight, I heard footsteps in the hallway. A soft knock. Come in, I said. Dr. Morrison entered, wearing a bathrobe and reading glasses. Saw your light was on. Can't sleep? Pain's not too bad. Just thinking. He sat in the reading chair. About your son? Ruth mentioned it. I know that particular pain. Not from a child, but from people you expect to be there who simply aren't. I don't understand it. I gave him everything. Worked myself half to death to make sure he had opportunities. And now that I need him, he's just gone. Kenneth was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you something about my career? In 30 years as a cardiac surgeon, I've seen thousands of patients. The ones who recover best aren't always the ones with the most money or the best insurance. They're the ones with people who show up, who sit by their beds, who ask questions, who care. The body heals better when the heart isn't broken. Mine's literally broken, I said, trying to make a joke. We fixed the physical part. But the other kind of heartbreak, that takes longer. And sometimes, Eugene, the people who are supposed to love us aren't capable of it. Not because we failed them, but because they've lost something along the way. Something essential. I must have done something wrong. You know what I think? I think you raised a son who succeeded professionally, and somewhere in that success, he forgot where he came from. He forgot the sacrifices. That's on him, not you. We talked until almost 2 a.m. Kenneth told me about his career, his late wife Sharon, who died of cancer 3 years earlier, his own estrangement from his brother, who only showed up after Sharon's death to ask about inheritance. I told him about Linda, about raising Bradley alone, about the small moments I'd been proud of that now felt hollow. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange blur of recovery and kindness. Helen checked on me like clockwork, managed my medications, helped with things I couldn't do myself. Gary drove me to follow-up appointments. Mary Johnson, the cook, made meals that actually tasted like food, not the frozen dinners I'd been living on. But beyond the medical care and comfortable room, there was something else. Companionship. Kenneth would stop by my room every evening after he got home from the hospital. We'd talk about everything: books, politics, the Lions' terrible season, our regrets and hopes. He introduced me to his friends who stopped by. Other doctors, retired colleagues, people who treated me like I belonged there. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen, valued, like my presence mattered. 10 days into my stay, Bradley finally called. Helen knocked on my door during lunch. Mr. Crawford, you have a call. Your son. My hands shook as I took the phone. Hey, Dad. His voice was casual. Too casual. Sorry I haven't checked in. Work's been crazy. How are you feeling? I'm recovering. I had major surgery, Bradley. Where have you been? I told you, work. Look, I'm calling because Jennifer and I want to come visit. See how you're doing. Maybe this Sunday? Something in his tone felt off. How did you get this number? I called the hospital. They transferred me. Dad, where are you? Why aren't you at home? I hesitated. I'm staying with a friend during recovery. What friend? You don't have... He stopped himself, but the implication was clear. A friend who actually showed up when I needed help. There was a pause. Dad, don't be dramatic. I was busy. You're fine, right? So, what's the big deal? The big deal? My son was asking what the big deal was about abandoning his father after open heart surgery. The address is 4782 Lakeshore Drive, I said quietly. Sunday at 2. Lakeshore. Dad, whose house are you at? I hung up before he could ask more questions. Kenneth appeared in the doorway. He'd been in his study but must have heard. Your son? I nodded. First time he's checked on me since the surgery. Wants to visit Sunday. Kenneth sat down. Let me guess. He suddenly became available when he found out where you're staying. How did you know? Because I've seen it before. People who disappear during the crisis suddenly reappear when they think there's something to gain. He paused. Eugene, I need to tell you something you're not going to like. My stomach dropped. What? I had my attorney do some checking. Your son Bradley, he's in financial trouble. Serious trouble. His firm's been losing major clients. He took out a second mortgage to maintain appearances. His wife's spending is out of control. They're leveraged to the point where one missed payment could collapse everything. Why would you? Because I wanted to know who had abandoned my patient, my friend, and what I found concerned me. Eugene, I think your son is coming Sunday because someone told him you're staying at the home of Dr. Kenneth Morrison, chief of cardiology at Henry Ford Hospital. The implications hit me like a punch. You think he's after money? I think he's desperate. And desperate people make calculated choices. He's my son. I hope you're right. But I've arranged for my attorney to be here Sunday, just in case. If I'm wrong, he'll stay out of sight. But if I'm right, he trailed off. Sunday came. Part of me wanted to believe Bradley was genuinely concerned. The doorbell rang at exactly 2 p.m. Gary answered it, and I heard Bradley's voice in the foyer, too loud, too cheerful. Wow, this is quite a place. Dad didn't mention he was staying somewhere, so... He appeared in the living room doorway and stopped. I was sitting in one of Kenneth's leather chairs. Kenneth stood next to the fireplace. Bradley's expression cycled through surprise, recognition, and then something else. Calculation. Dr. Morrison, Bradley said. I know you from the hospital. Bradley Crawford. He walked over and shook Kenneth's hand too vigorously. I can't thank you enough for taking care of my father. This is incredible, above and beyond. Your father and I go back many years, Kenneth said evenly. Jennifer appeared behind Bradley, dressed like she was going to a country club. Her eyes swept the room, taking in the artwork, the obvious wealth. Oh my God, she whispered to Bradley. This is Dr. Morrison. Bradley sat down next to me, his hand landing on my shoulder. It was the first time he'd touched me in over a year. Dad, you're looking good, really good. Much better than I expected. No thanks to you, I said quietly. His hand tightened on my shoulder. A warning. Dad, come on, I explained. I was slammed with work. But I'm here now. Better late than never, right? Kenneth explained the story about the envelope, the money, how it had kept him going through medical school. As he talked, I watched Bradley's face. He wasn't listening like a son hearing about his father's quiet acts of kindness. He was listening like a lawyer evaluating an asset. When Kenneth finished, Bradley shook his head in wonder. Dad, I had no idea you did things like that. That's really something. Your father is a remarkable man, Kenneth said, which is why, when he needed help and his family wasn't there, I wanted to make sure he was taken care of. The word family hung in the air like an accusation. Bradley flinched. Before anyone could respond, Bradley stood up. Dr. Morrison, could I speak with you privately about Dad's care plan? Kenneth glanced at me. I nodded reluctantly. In Kenneth's study, Bradley closed the door and got straight to the point. Dr. Morrison, I want to be direct. I know my father can be proud, stubborn. He probably hasn't told you, but he's not doing well financially. His pension barely covers rent. He's got medical bills that'll bury him. I'm aware, Kenneth said, settling behind his desk. Right. So here's what I'm thinking. You clearly care about my dad. What if he stayed here permanently? You get companionship, he gets security. Everyone wins. Interesting proposal. Where do you fit in this arrangement? Bradley hesitated. Well, I'm his son. Obviously, I'd need to be involved in any major decisions. Power of attorney, that kind of thing, to protect Dad's interests. His interests or yours? I don't appreciate what you're implying. I'm not implying anything, Bradley. I'm stating it directly. You disappeared when your father needed you most. Now you're proposing an arrangement that would give you legal control over his affairs. Bradley's face reddened. You don't know anything about my relationship with my father. I know he called you from the hospital, terrified, and you were at a business dinner. I know he spent 3 days post-surgery with no visitors. I know he couldn't get a ride home because his son blocked his number. You had no right? I had every right to protect my friend. Kenneth opened a drawer and pulled out a folder. I'm going to make you an offer. One time only. He slid the folder across the desk. That's a check for $75,000. It'll cover your immediate debts, buy you some breathing room. Bradley opened the folder, his hands trembling as he saw the check. There are conditions, Kenneth continued. First, this money is for necessities, not maintaining a lifestyle you can't afford. Second, you will repair your relationship with your father, not because he's staying with a wealthy man, but because he's your father. Third, you will never ask him or me for money again. Why would you do this? Because your father would want me to help you. Even after everything, he still loves you. I'm doing this for him, not you. And if I don't accept the conditions, then you leave with nothing, and I'll make sure your firm knows exactly why you suddenly have an interest in your father's welfare. Bradley stared at the check, then at Kenneth, then back at the check. Finally, he folded the folder. I need to think about it. You have until you walk out that door. They returned to the living room. Bradley's face was unreadable. Jennifer immediately jumped up. Well, what did you two talk about? Nothing important, Bradley said. He looked at me. Dad, can we talk alone? We went out to the garden. It was a beautiful afternoon, warm for March in Michigan. Bradley was quiet for a long time. Dad, I'm sorry, he finally said. For what, specifically? For not being there? For everything. He sat down on a stone bench. Dad, I'm not the success you think I am. The firm's struggling. I made bad investments. Jennifer spends money faster than I can make it. We're drowning in debt, and I couldn't face you. I couldn't look you in the eye and admit I'd screwed up everything you sacrificed for. So you just disappeared. I know it was cowardly. I told myself I'd visit after I got things under control. But things never got under control. And you thought you could use me. Use my connection to Kenneth. He nodded, not meeting my eyes. Yeah. And Dr. Morrison just offered me $75,000 to help with my debts. Are you going to take it? I don't know. The conditions they're fair, but they're hard. He wants me to fix our relationship, to actually be your son again. And you don't think you can do that? I don't know if I deserve to. I sat down next to him. Bradley, when your mother died, I didn't think I could go on. But I had you. And I made a choice. I could wallow in my grief, or I could be the father you needed. So I chose you. Every single day, I chose you. That's what makes this worse. Let me finish. I chose you, and I'd do it again, because that's what love is. It's choosing someone even when it's hard, even when they disappoint you. I looked at him. You failed me, Bradley. You hurt me more than I knew I could be hurt. But you're still my son, and if you want to repair this, not because Kenneth is making you, but because you want to, then I'm here. Bradley started crying. Real tears. I'm so sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry. I put my arm around him, careful of my healing chest. I know. Now, what are you going to do about it? Bradley took Kenneth's offer. Over the next 8 months, he called me every Tuesday and Thursday. At first, the conversations were awkward, but slowly it got easier. He told me about his work, his fears, therapy he'd started, and he visited every other Sunday, sometimes with Jennifer, sometimes alone. A year after my surgery, Kenneth asked if I'd consider staying permanently. Eugene, I have more space than I need and more money than I can spend. You have companionship to offer and stories I want to hear. Why not make this official? I thought about my apartment, the thin walls, the loneliness. Then I thought about the last year, conversations over breakfast, watching games together, having someone who actually wanted me around. Okay, I said. On one condition, I pay rent, $400 a month from my pension. Kenneth laughed. Eugene, my property taxes are more than your annual pension. $400 a month or I'm not staying. He sighed. You're the most stubborn man I've ever met. Fine, I'll donate it to charity in your name. When Kenneth passed peacefully in his sleep 5 years later at 76, it felt like losing a brother. At the will reading, I learned he'd left me everything. The house, the medical buildings, investments worth more than I'd earn in 10 lifetimes. His attorney handed me an envelope. Inside was a note. Eugene, 35 years ago, you gave me $500 and hope. I'm leaving you everything because you taught me that family isn't about blood. It's about showing up. Use this wealth to help others. Be someone's miracle. Today I still live in Kenneth's house, my house now. I've set up a foundation providing grants to medical students from working families. Every recipient gets an envelope with $500 and a note. Someone believes in you. keep going. Bradley visits every Sunday with his daughter Sarah. They named her after my late wife Linda. She calls me Grandpa Gene and asks me to tell her stories about Uncle Kenneth. Bradley and Jennifer downsized, got their finances straight, and he's learned what really matters isn't the size of your house, but who's sitting at your dinner table. We save each other. Not with grand gestures, but with small acts of kindness when no one's watching. With showing up when it's hard. With choosing someone every day, even when they disappoint you. My son almost lost me, but he found me again. I almost lost everything, but found something better. A brother, a purpose, a real family built not from blood, but from choice. All because I collapsed in a parking lot, and a doctor remembered my name from an envelope he'd received 35 years ago. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest. Ripples. A $500 envelope changed 2 lives across 35 years, proving that what we give away in our darkest moments often comes back to save us when we need it most. Real wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in who shows up when you're broken, and true family isn't built from blood, but from the daily choice to love someone even when they've failed you.